Right. Hey there, Travis here from IntelligentChoice. So today we're diving into Google Gemini, but not in the usual, wow, look how smart this AI is kind of way, because if you jump straight into how clever Gemini is, you kind of miss the most important question, which is where does Gemini live and what is it actually designed to do? So in this video, I'm going to be breaking it down into three sort of simple parts. So first, the foundations of Google Cloud. Next, what Gemini actually adds on top of that. And finally, an example that sort of just makes it all click together. So before we dive into Gemini itself, let's just take a step back here and look at the platform that it's built on, Google Cloud. So let's get into that. All right, so look, Gemini isn't just floating in space. It's embedded in a platform which has been designed to understand data at massive scale. So at its core, Google Cloud gives business free sort of foundational capabilities, just like any other serious cloud platform. The first is compute. So this is what runs your applications, services, and AI workloads. So on Google Cloud, this shows up as compute engine. So this is virtual machines which have been designed to sort of handle those heavy workloads like AI training or running full-blown applications where you control the resources. The second here is Cloud Run. So this is sort of the serverless containers that they scale automatically with demand. So they're perfect for your APIs and microservices. So whether it's a small app or a planet scale system, Google handles the scaling. So second here is storage. So this is everything from images, videos, audio, and sensor data. So cloud storage really is behind the scenes here. This is all where the data is stored, and it's scalable based on a globally accessible system. So Google has spent decades managing real-world data at insane scale. So this really is their home turf. And finally, third, this is data and analytics. So this is where Google really stands out at making sense of massive data sets near real time and pulling signal out of noise. So the first is BigQuery. So this is what I would call a serverless data warehouse for being able to query and analyze massive data sets quickly. So you're able to extract insights without managing the infrastructure yourself. And next is data flow. So this is what actually manages the pipelines for transforming and moving data both at batch and streaming. So it's all ready for analysis. So even before we say the word AI, Google Cloud already sees the world through data. All right, so now that we've seen the foundations of Google Cloud, we can add Gemini on top. And this is typically when people get confused. So Gemini isn't just Google's chatbot. So at its core, Gemini is a native multi-modal reasoning model, which has been designed to understand the world the way that humans do. So it has the ability to take text, images, video, audio, numbers, and even code, not just one by one, but at the same time together. So instead of saying, here's some text, here's an image, and combine them together, Gemini treats everything as if it's one shared context. So it's able to form a hypothesis, then it explores the situation, and it asks itself, do I have enough information now to move forward and generate an answer? So that's why Gemini feels a lot less like a tool, but more like an agent. And that's why this distinction really matters. So most Copilots today are task assistants. So they're great at drafting, summarizing, and responding. You ask and they answer. Gemini is different as it's been designed to reason, explore, and then decide how to actually approach a problem. So that's what makes it far more suited for complex systems where you've got messy real-world data and situations where the next step really isn't that obvious. So instead of just helping people work faster, Gemini helps the system itself think better. All right, so let's put this all together with a bit of a real-world example. So I want you to imagine a customer sends in a photo of a crushed delivery along with a pretty frustrated message. So for most systems, all it sees is two separate files, but for Gemini, it sees a situation. It's taking in that photo, the text, and the order ID all at once. So it doesn't just scan for keywords, it starts to reason. It forms a hypothesis. So, the box is damaged and the delivery was late. To me, this looks like a shipping issue, not a warehouse mistake. But Gemini doesn't just guess, it goes into your system to double check the facts. If a piece of the puzzle is missing, like a late scan from the carrier, it keeps looking. It loops back and connects those dots and stays thinking in the thinking phase where it keeps going until the story actually adds up. So it's very investigative by nature. It only moves forward once it's certain, so it's only looking for a yes that's been based on evidence rather than just a hunch. That's the point when it triggers a resolution. It's not just a chat reply, but it's a real world fix. So it issues a refund and alerts the appropriate team, explaining exactly why it made that call. To the customer, this is a major relief, but for the business, it's actually a system that understands the real world and finally thinks before it acts. So seeing Gemini in action is great, but like any system, it has its strengths and trade-offs. So its major strengths is that it understands situations and not just prompts. It's able to handle messy real-world data naturally, and it's built for reasoning across multiple data types simultaneously, but with the trade-offs here, that can kind of be overkill for simple one-off type tasks. It needs really good data and context to shine. And finally, it's not always the fastest option for basic automation. So really put simply, if you want help writing an email, Gemini might be a little too much, but if you want a system that truly understands what's happening, this is where it shines. And really, that's the key distinction here. Gemini isn't trying to be the best AI for every task. But if you're operating inside complex systems where data's messy, context matters, and decisions depend on what's actually happening, this is exactly what it was built for. And that brings us to the final piece of this mini-series. While platforms like AWS and Google focus on where AI lives inside the system, the last platform we'll focus on covers on how humans interact with AI. So in that final episode, we'll be looking at ChatGPT, not as a model, but as the interface layer that's really changing how people access intelligence. And finally, if you're experimenting with Gemini or exploring how AI fits into your systems, please reach out to me on LinkedIn. I'd love to hear what you're building and swap ideas. So until then, I'll catch you in the next one.